Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Today we begin with a breaking story from India. An Air India flight en route from Today we are breaking a story from India. We begin with a breaking story. An Air India flight en route from Ahmedabad to London has crashed shortly after takeoff. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner operating as flight AI-171 took off from Ahmedabad at 1:38 p.m. local time today. Just 5 minutes later, it went down in a residential area called Meghani Nagar. Thick smoke and dust could be seen for miles. On board were 242 people, including 230 adults, 2 infants, and 12 crew members. Of the passengers, there were 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 1 Canadian national, and 7 Portuguese nationals. The pilot in command has been identified as Sumit Sabharwar, with co-pilot Clive Kunder. Airport officials say the last signal from the aircraft came at 8:08 UTC, just seconds after liftoff. The Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport has been shut down and all flights are temporarily suspended. 3 NDRF teams comprising 90 rescuers have been rushed in from Gandhinagar, with more teams en route from Vadodara. Directorate General of Civil Aviation officials who were already in Ahmedabad for another task are now investigating this incident. More updates as they come in. Now we have guest Dr. M.J. Augustine Vinod. He's a former Indian Air Force officer. He'll join us now. Thank you so much for joining us today. What more can you tell us about the current situation and the seriousness and significance of this accident?
Yeah, it's a good question. In fact, I even fly the big jets. Prima facie, what appears to me, I mean, if you look at the history of the Dreamliner 787 in 2013, if you remember, it was grounded for a while because of electrical firing, because of its lithium-ion battery catching fire, which was an electrical issue. And there was a Latam Airlines, I remember, which had some in-flight incident in which 50 people were injured. And the first crash of 787, I think, is this one. I don't recall any other crash of 787 Dreamliner prior to this. And this particular aeroplane, 32279, is the serial number of this aeroplane, and the Victor Tango Alpha November Bravo, VTA and B is the registration. This particular aeroplane has done only 11 years in service. And a reason why an aeroplane, as we can see in the visuals, sinks back into the ground are only 3. First is the hot and heavy takeoff, which in this case is not the case because as it got lifted off, it lifted off cleanly. Secondly is when you have an engine loss. When you listen to the audio, I'm not hearing any sudden loss of thrust. If it has been there, it would be there before the video was started. But at least during the entire sequence of video till the crash happens, you can hear the engine noise, a steady stream of engine noise. But what I am not able to see is the flaps being down. Flaps are the trailing edge of the wing which comes down, which allows the aeroplane to take off at much slower speed, which I am not able to see. The undercarriage or the gears are still down, but the flap is up. That and 2013 of electrical fire, could it be correlated? is a question that I ask myself. And another reason why I ask myself this question is the reason why the pilot has given a mayday call. So mayday, when pilot declares a mayday, he requires an urgent help in a single engine. And let me reiterate this and repeat it. This aeroplane is capable of taking off after a speed called V1 at which we take off and comfortably come back and land in a single engine. It is designed for a single engine flight. So all put together, the fact still remains is prima facie, could it be loss of lift? That is the question I ask myself. Why did the flaps go up is something only the FDR will be able to tell us. What led to the crash without the FDR, even the God won't be able to tell us what led to the crash. So we'll have to wait for the initial data milking out from the FDR, which I'm more than certain is absolutely intact because the tail portion of the aeroplane is intact on a building, which we can see very much from the visuals. So milking out data from the FDR quickly because the FDR or the black box is in the tail is not going to take time. I'm sure DGCA, the Director General Civil Aviation Organization of India, quickly will come out with the second statement. In the first statement, they have declared very clearly that pilot expressed his inability by declaring something called Mayday, which is a distress signal. So there has been a distress. Pilots have understood the aspect of distress, and that is when they have declared the distress call, even when the time was so short. When the aeroplane started to sink to the time it impacted, it was very little. I mean, when you count from the video, it is less than 4.5 to 5 seconds. In that, he is able to even push out the call. That means there's something that has gone wrong. What has gone wrong? We need to wait for DGCA to come out. What could have gone wrong is something which we can talk about in a generic term, and which is what I have done. In a generic term, we have tried to discuss what can lead to aeroplane sinking like that into the ground. Over to you.
And Dr. M.J. Augustine, since you've already mentioned that the aircraft such as Boeing 787 to crash was highly unlikely, how reliable is India's aircraft maintenance and safety oversight compared to international norms, according to you?
Wonderful question. In India, maintenance is it is our bread and butter. There is I have had the opportunity of looking at many international airlines, training with at least 3 international airlines separately. The Indian maintenance people I have met with many who are working in many other international airlines. So if you go to, I can name a few. If you go to many of the international airlines, ask who is the chief pilot, more often than chief engineer, or one of the senior engineers, more often than not, you will come across that he will be an Indian. Because in India, maintenance is extremely serious. B, there is no shortcut that is taken. And C, we follow everything by the book. If the book says a particular part needs to be replaced at say 100 hours, we might do it at 90 and not 101 or 100.1. So maintenance aspect, absolutely spot on, bang on in India. Over to you.
And then should Air India and the DGCA have foreseen any red flags in this flight's maintenance and the crew's preparedness?
Neither in the aeroplane nor in the airline. So both are two different entities. See, this is the first crash involving Boeing 787. This is not 737 MAX. 737 MAX had a very unfortunate back-to-back crashes, which we saw in Lion Air and one in Africa because of something called MCAS. This is not the case. And I also pointed out to you in 2013, the entire Dreamliner fleet was grounded because of some electrical issue. So was it completely sorted out is the question I'm asked myself. Over to you.
And now we have another breaking news. Thank you for joining us today. Flight operations have resumed at Ahmedabad Airport from 16:05 IST local time. According to the Ministry of Civil Aviation, authorities confirmed the airport is fully functional. Safety protocols are being carried out with utmost care to ensure the secure handling of all incoming and outgoing flights following the earlier Air India crash incidents. Now we're going back to our guest discussions. We have retired Captain Anil Gaur. He's a defense expert. He's joining us now. Thank you for joining us today. According to you, how might this crash affect India's aviation reputation, and especially as it tries to navigate and expand on international routes?
You see, Indian aviation is on the rise, and if you see all the reports by all the trade papers and even the technical teams and others, you will see that the Indian aviation sector is on the rise and approximately 18 to 20% per annum. And this is the only sector in the world that is on the rise, because Indian economy is on the rise, and that is why you find that this is there with even the aviation sector. Now, as far as this crash is concerned, you see, till the time the FTR is not decoded, and the actual reasons found for why this crash happened and how it happened, because you see the moment, what we see in the visuals, the aircraft has crashed moments after takeoff. That means that there has been something seriously wrong with it, and what I can visualize is that there has been a loss of power in the aircraft, and that is why it has crashed. Because if there was some power in some of the engines, the aircraft would not have sunk the way it is seen in the visuals. It shows that there has been a total loss of power over there. Now, along with that, like Dr. Augustine mentioned, the flaps and other parts are also not, they are not extended. So it shows that there has been some serious electrical or some other failure has happened, but that will come out only once the FDR is decoded. Now, that should not affect the Indian aviation sector per se as such, because you see, if it is found out after the FDR is decoded that this crash is attributed to some maintenance errors or some other human errors, then it's a different question. But if it is due to some technical errors of the Dreamliner itself, though that is not going to affect the Indian aviation sector per se. Such crashes, you see, it happens. Like why it happens, what happens, that can only be known once all the parameters of the FDRs are decoded.
And Mr. Gaur, also, what lessons must Indian aviation learn to prevent such incidents in the future, as this industry, like you said, is growing very fast, very rapidly, and India's economy is also growing very rapidly?
One thing is there that the DGCA is our oversight body, and that is very strict on all issues, including maintenance and security. And also the pilots, what is their the rotation of the pilots, the number of hours they are flying, and everything and all. Overall, if you see the way that the whole operations are conducted by the airline sector in India, I think they are much far better than what you find in other countries, because we have seen what sort of lapses either there are in maintenance or in others by some countries abroad, which are not found here in India. The main issue is that one crash per se like this, and that too, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think this is crash has been after quite a number of years that such a crash has happened. And with the Dreamliner, this is the first crash of a Dreamliner per se. So this is something serious for the Boeing company also to investigate, for the DGCA and the FDA also to investigate as to what actually went wrong with this aircraft. And the pilots giving out a call of Mayday shows that the pilots are aware that this plane is not under their control and it's going to crash. And we see that I think about 4 or 5 seconds after the Mayday call has come, the plane has crashed. So this shows that there has been something like uh, it happens, like earlier also there was some electrical problem which led to some loss of control, some loss of command and control over the aircraft, which uh, leads to one thing is there that all the equipment that is functioning in the aircraft shuts down immediately. And I think this is something that has happened because that is the way the aircraft has sunk immediately. Now, keeping in view that this crash, of course, with 242 lives lost, this is a very serious matter. The DGCA and other agencies are going to investigate it very thoroughly. And once the findings come out, then only we can take preventive action on it. But till that time, the other, what you call is the maintenance checks and other checks that are normally mandated by the DGCA, there is going to be a what we call is a more sort of a strict action on that to ensure that those checks are carried out, whether it is the maintenance of the aircraft or even otherwise. The DGCA is going to ensure that each and everything is followed as per the book. And I think we would not be, I would not be wrong in saying this thing that this also would be taken into stride because I don't see any pilot error or I don't see any maintenance error per se on this, the way it has crashed.
And
Do you want to put this one?
so building on to the point, Captain Anil Gaur, should there be an independent commission beyond DGCA to investigate this crash, as there are international passengers who were also affected from this crash, like the Portuguese people and the British passengers?
That issue, the DGCA is going to investigate, but the FTA is going to come around there to investigate that. The Federal Department of Aviation from the states and others, they are going to definitely come and even Boeing is going to come and investigate into this because it's not going to be left only to the DGCA. It's going to be a thorough investigation by all agencies because the way the plane has crashed is something very surprising. That to see the plane just, I remember there was this crash in New York, but that happened because of a bird hit and the plane was ditched into the Hudson River. But that is a different matter altogether. But this way, the way the plane has crashed is something which needs to be investigated thoroughly by all agencies and to come to the conclusion if there is something wrong with the aircraft per se, or there is something wrong with the onboard computers per se, or if there was something wrong with the maintenance per se, or if there was something wrong with the way the pilots handled the plane, everything has to come out in the open so that people get to know what went wrong with it, and then take preventive action. So this is not going to be just a DGCA show. It's going to be a complete investigation by all agencies to come down to the truth and find out why this plane has crashed.
Thank you very much, Captain
Thank you.
Anil Gaur, for bringing your expertise as defense expert. And now we are also joined by Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister. He's joining us live from London. Thank you for joining us today. What role should the British and Canadian, also Portuguese governments play in investigating this this crash and supporting the affected people and their families?
Good afternoon from London. Obviously, our first thoughts and prayers are with those who have been affected and the families of those who must be anxiously waiting at Ahmedabad airport and in Gatwick to hear news. I'm very pleased that both the Indian government and Air India have put out emergency numbers for people to ring. There is a protocol that needs to be followed swiftly. People need to be able to ring someone to find out exactly what is happening. And that is usually the next of kin. And that information is gathered at the time you make your booking or at the time you check in at the airport. So the previous speaker is right. There has to be obviously an investigation as quickly as possible, because obviously there are airplanes going around the world and everyone wants to know what happened. But primarily for the relatives and for those who are suffering by what has happened, there needs to be an emergency contact which people can ring. There is one. I've just been in touch with the Indian High Commissioner in London. He has provided a lot of information, which we will put out to the community so that they can ring and find out what's happening. I hope the British government has done the same, because as you say, there are 53 British nationals, and even those who are of Portuguese origin are more likely than not to be resident in the United Kingdom. We don't know for sure, but judging from a place like Leicester, where there is a large Gujarati community, we're often referred to as mini Gujarat. There are many people from the Daman and Diu communities there. So some of them are Portuguese passport holders, although they are Indian origin and they live in the United Kingdom. So now the key issue is people need to phone a number and get the information as quickly as possible.
And Sarvaz, I've also asked this question to our earlier guest, Captain Anil Gaur, but according to you, how might this crash affect India's aviation reputation in global perspective?
Yeah, I listened to the last bit of what the captain said. He's obviously very experienced in these matters, and it's not for me to second guess what he's saying. But the issue is plane crashes do occur. Traveling by plane is regarded as being one of the safest forms of transport. India has a great reputation, a massive reputation in terms of aviation. And people travel by Air India and all the airlines all the time. So let us not prejudge what has happened. He has said clearly there has to be an investigation. Of course there has to be, because this is an event that has been dominating the world news. It affects people. People have died. And therefore we need to know, we don't know exactly how many have been injured, what the fatalities are, but there is an assumption. So whatever the assumption, the key thing is there has to be contact with the relatives, and of course there has to be an investigation. But India has a very strong reputation for aviation travel, amongst the best in the world, and I think everyone would be keen to make sure this is investigated in the proper way in due time to provide the information that's necessary. But our first concern is the relatives and those who are suffering as a result of this crash, both the local people who are affected and those people who were on the aeroplane.
Thank you very much, Keith Vaz, for joining us and sharing your expertise. Now you will stay with us as we have a breaking news. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed deep condolences to Indian President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi following the tragic plane crash in Ahmedabad. He extended sympathy to victims and families and wished a swift recovery to the injured. Now we're going back to our discussion with Sir Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister and he's joining us live from London. Thank you for staying with us. Now moving on to another question, should there be an independent commission beyond DGCA to investigate this crash, as there are also international passengers involved in this crash?
I am sure that the proper protocols will be followed. There is a protocol for dealing with these issues. Not every aircraft has only citizens from one country on them. I am sure everyone, the Indian government, everyone will do everything that is according to the book, according to the protocols, to make sure that we know what happens. I don't think there's anyone who would expect anything different from a great country like India with a great airline system. I'm sure all the protocols will be followed. I'm sorry, I have to be away because I'm receiving a couple of calls as we speak from those who are relatives of people who might be on the airplane. But I'm sorry I have to go now, but I hope very much your discussion continues.
Thank you very much, Sir Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister. He joined us live from London, and thank you for sharing your expertise. Now we have a breaking news. Airspace is sending a team to India to analyze cockpit data from the Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner that crashed today. The aircraft was powered by GE Aerospace's Gen X-1B engines. GE shares fell 6.3% following this news of the crash earlier today. Now we will go back to our news discussion. We'll be joined by retired Captain Anil Gaur. He's a defense expert. Thank you, Sir Anil Gaur, for staying with us. What role do flight data records and cockpit voice recorders play in investigating cases like this? What can we, or when can we expect answers?
The flight data recorder is a instrument that goes on continuously recording in it. Now, what happens is if any action or any mishap happens in the plane, the last 10 minutes of that flight are recorded to that, and that data is recovered, and that contains every parameter of the flight, including what you say, right from the way the plane is being handled, including what is being talked between the pilots in the cockpit, and that helps the investigators to understand as to what went wrong, because the last 10 minutes of the flight are very crucial just before the crash, and those give the ready answers to the investigators, and then they can piece together as to what actually happened. And along with that, whatever recovery that they do, whatever debris are recovered, they undertake an inspection of those debris and correlate that with what is coming in from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, and then come down to the conclusion as to what went wrong with the airplane. Now, that is how the truth, it comes out, and people understand as to what went wrong with the flight. And that is how the confidence of the people to travel by air remains. And that is how also the confidence of the manufacturers in their equipment comes in to play, because if there has been something wrong, now like you can see the way when you send a spacecraft to the moon or a spacecraft outside, it takes off, and you find that there is even if there is a 0.01% of failure in any part of it causes a crash. The same thing is over here. If it has been due to some part, whichever part is there, that would be then investigated. After investigations, the manufacturers would go into it and see as to what is to be done and how they would replace it with a better system or remodel that system, whatever it is to be done, to ensure that all the future flights, all the future planes are safe then.
And Captain Anil Gaur, you will stay with us. We have some breaking news. We're now getting an update from the Embassy of India in Lisbon, Portugal. As per available information, 7 Portuguese nationals were on board in this flight, the ill-fated Air India flight. The embassy has assured that all necessary assistance will be extended to the families concerned. For any emergency support, they'll have issued a helpline number. It's +351 911 991 939. Let me repeat that number. They have issued a helpline number. It is +351 911 991 and 939. Now we have another breaking news. GE Aerospace has tweeted on the crash today, saying that we are deeply saddened by the loss of Air India flight AI-171. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to the families and loved ones of those impacted. We have activated our emergency response team, and we are prepared to support our customer and the investigation. Now we are going back and joined by our retired Captain Anil Gaur for discussion on this news. He's joining us as a defense expert. Captain Anil Gaur, how significant is the timing of the last signal, which was just seconds after takeoff, in determining this cause?
See, that the last call that the pilot made was of Mayday. Now that a pilot makes a Mayday call only when he realizes that they cannot control the plane. It is beyond their control, and that plane is in serious trouble. And 90%, 99%, it is going to be a crash. So that is how they say call for a mayday. And if, I again say if, there is that 1% of a chance for the flight to be able to, the pilot to able to land that plane in a safe place, that is there. But 99.9% you find that the plane has to just ditch and comes down wherever it is. Now that mayday call is very significant because that shows that the pilot was in command of the plane, and they realized, the pilot and the co-pilot both realized that look, there is something seriously wrong with the plane and this is going to go down, which they cannot control, and that is why they gave that mayday call.
And what role might local weather or runway conditions have played in this crash?
No, I think the weather is absolutely clear as far as the visuals are concerned, and you see the runway is functioning okay because many flights had taken off and landed before this plane took off. I don't think so. The runway and the weather will play a very big part in the investigations when the truth comes out. More, it's going to be more of what is wrong, what went wrong within the plane itself. Because as far as we can see, that with the pilot giving a mayday call, that shows that there has been some failure in the plane system per se. Now, which system had a failure? That would only come out when the FDRs and the CPRs are decoded and the data taken out and investigated and read, and then a conclusion is formed.
And Captain Anil Gaur, you have kind of mentioned how significant is the first 5 minutes, but building on that, how crucial are the first 5 minutes of flight in escalating or assessing the aircraft to its peak performance and a safe flight?
See, the plane has taken off. There is no doubt with that. That shows that the engine power was perfect, and the speed that the plane had to, the takeoff speed of what they say, that was okay. Now, it has taken off and it has attained a height, and that, you see, when the plane takes off, this is the most crucial part of the flight. Taking off and reaching a flight, what we call an altitude of about 1,000 feet or above. Now that part is there where the engine power is required to be the most, because that is the time when the plane is under that what we call strain of lifting itself up. Now the way it has sunk, the plane with the visuals that I see, the way it has sunk, I presume, it's just a presumption, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I presume there has been a loss of engine power. And that is why the pilot has given a mayday call, and the plane, within 5 seconds of his mayday call, it has just crashed onto the ground. If there was some engine power with it, the plane would not have crashed the way it crashed. It would have then glided a little bit more. Because you see, if the plane has some engine power, like this plane, like Dr. Augustine was also saying, that this plane is capable of enough to come to fly on one engine too. But this shows the weight has completely sunk. It shows that there has been a complete loss of power from both the engines. Now, if this is the conclusion that is shown by the flight FDR, then it's a very serious problem. I think then the entire Dreamliner fleet would have to be grounded and investigations done into it as to why and how, and the part after the investigation, where it has, what led to this loss of power, what parts led to this loss of power and all would maybe have to be checked, rechecked and replaced.
Thank you very much, Captain Anil Gaur, for joining us and sharing your expertise as a defense expert today. Now we have another breaking news. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has expressed condolences on the Air India crash, tweeting that, "Deeply saddened by the tragic plane crash in Ahmedabad, on behalf of the Italian government and myself, I express my sincere condolences to the families of the victims and our full solidarity with the Indian people in this moment of great sorrow. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates